California has spent decades confronting a reality that shapes nearly every aspect of life within its borders. Water is abundant at certain moments, scarce at others, and rarely available exactly when and where it is needed. Across a state that supports roughly 40 million residents, produces a substantial share of the nation's agricultural output, and experiences recurring cycles of drought and flood, the challenge has never been merely finding water. The challenge has been storing it. That challenge took another significant turn in June of 2026, when state officials announced nearly $269 million in additional funding for the long-debated Sites Reservoir Project, a massive water storage undertaking designed to capture water during wet periods and hold that water for future use. The funding increase, totaling approximately $268.9 million, pushes the project's potential state support to more than $1,360 million and marks one of the most consequential water infrastructure commitments currently underway in California. The announcement arrives at a moment when California's relationship with water is being reshaped by changing weather patterns, growing demands on existing supplies, and increasing concern over the state's ability to withstand future droughts. The decision also highlights a broader shift in water policy that places renewed emphasis on expanding storage capacity after years of debate over environmental impacts, costs, and long-term planning. For many Californians, the announcement raises important questions. Why is the state investing such a large amount of money in a single reservoir project? What exactly is being built? Where will the water come from? And why has this project become such a central piece of California's strategy for securing water supplies in the decades ahead? The answers reveal a project that has been discussed for years, but is now moving closer to reality than at any previous point. The Sites Reservoir Project is not a traditional dam project in the way many people might imagine. Unlike famous reservoirs that sit directly behind large river-blocking dams, Sites Reservoir is planned as an off-stream reservoir. Rather than stopping a major river and creating a lake behind it, the project is designed to capture water from the Sacramento River during periods when flows are high, and store that water in a separate location away from the river itself. The proposed reservoir site lies in portions of Colusa and Glenn counties, in the northern part of California's Central Valley region. According to project documents, the reservoir would be situated roughly 10 miles, or approximately 16 kilometers, west of the community of Maxwell. Water would be diverted from the Sacramento River through a system of pumping facilities and existing infrastructure before being transferred into the new storage basin. At full capacity, the reservoir is expected to hold approximately 1.5 million acre-feet of water. To appreciate the scale of that figure, 1 acre-foot represents enough water to cover an acre of land to a depth of 1 foot, or approximately 0.3 meters. 1.5 million acre-feet translates into an immense quantity of stored water capable of supporting homes, agriculture, environmental needs, and emergency drought supplies. State officials estimate that the reservoir's capacity would be sufficient to provide enough water for more than 4.5 million households for a year. The project's significance becomes clearer when viewed against California's long history of water management. For generations, California's water infrastructure was built around a relatively predictable climate. Snow accumulated in mountain ranges during winter, gradually melted during spring and summer, and replenished rivers, reservoirs, and water delivery systems. Large reservoirs served as storage banks, capturing seasonal runoff and releasing water as needed. That system helped fuel population growth, agricultural expansion, and economic development across the state. Yet the climatic conditions that shape those infrastructure decisions are changing. California increasingly experiences dramatic swings between extremely wet years and exceptionally dry ones. Major storms can deliver enormous volumes of water within a short period, while prolonged droughts can stretch for years. In many cases, existing infrastructure struggles to capture large flood flows before that water moves through river systems and eventually reaches the Pacific Ocean. The Sites Reservoir concept emerged from recognition of this challenge. Instead of relying solely on snowpack as a natural storage system, planners envisioned creating additional capacity that could capture excess flows during particularly wet periods. Water stored during those periods could then be released during dry conditions, when demand exceeds available supplies. The newly announced funding represents another step toward making that concept operational. According to California officials, the additional $268.9 million comes through the California Water Commission and strengthens the state's financial commitment to the project. Combined with previous allocations, the reservoir is now eligible for more than $1,363 million through the Water Storage Investment Program supported by statewide voter-approved initiatives. The size of that public investment reflects the importance California places on increasing water storage capacity. State planning documents have identified expanded storage as a key component of future water security. California's long-term water goals include developing millions of additional acre-feet of conservation, storage, and supply capacity over the coming decades. The Sites Reservoir Project represents one of the largest individual contributions toward those objectives. The project is also notable because of its intended flexibility. Unlike reservoirs dependent primarily on snowmelt, Sites Reservoir is designed to capture runoff generated by large rainfall events. Climate projections indicate that a greater proportion of future precipitation may fall as rain rather than snow in parts of California. That shift increases the importance of infrastructure capable of capturing large storm flows when they occur. The reservoir's design seeks to address precisely that challenge. During wet periods, water would be diverted from the Sacramento River and transferred into storage. During dry periods, that water could be released back into the broader water system, helping stabilize supplies for agricultural users, communities, and environmental purposes. Agriculture remains a major consideration. California's farms depend heavily on reliable water deliveries. The state produces fruits, vegetables, nuts, and other crops consumed throughout the United States and around the world. Variations in water availability can influence planting decisions, crop yields, and long-term agricultural planning. Additional storage capacity does not create new water out of thin air. What it does provide is a greater ability to retain water that might otherwise pass through the system during periods of abundance. That capability can help reduce the severity of shortages during drought conditions. Municipal water systems also stand to benefit. California's population continues to require dependable access to drinking water and other essential supplies. Urban water agencies have increasingly sought diversified strategies that include conservation, recycling, groundwater management, and additional storage. Sites Reservoir fits into that broader portfolio approach by adding another source of operational flexibility. Environmental objectives have also become part of the project's stated purpose. Project descriptions indicate that stored water could be directed toward wildlife refuges and habitat support during critical periods. Facilities identified as potential beneficiaries include several wildlife refuge systems dependent on reliable water deliveries. The project also includes provisions intended to support environmental water uses during drought conditions. Another notable feature is emergency drought storage. Officials have stated that up to 200,000 acre-feet of captured water could be available as a dedicated supply during officially declared drought emergencies. Such reserves could provide an additional buffer during severe shortages when traditional supplies come under stress. Flood management represents another dimension of the proposal. California's recent experience has demonstrated that drought and flood are not mutually exclusive. The state can experience years of severe dryness, followed by intense storm systems capable of producing destructive flooding. Capturing portions of high-flow events offers potential benefits beyond water supply. Reducing some flood flows and storing them for future use can help transform short-term surpluses into long-term resources. The project's physical footprint is substantial. Plans call for construction that includes major dams, saddle dams, pumping facilities, pipelines, transportation improvements, and recreational infrastructure. Water would move through an interconnected network involving both new and existing facilities. The overall system is intended to integrate with California's broader water delivery network, allowing stored water to be distributed where needed. Such a large undertaking naturally requires extensive permitting and regulatory review. The project has undergone years of environmental analysis, planning, and legal scrutiny. State agencies continue to review various permits and certifications associated with water rights, water quality, and construction requirements. Public review processes have accompanied multiple stages of project development. Water rights remain a particularly important aspect. Because the reservoir would divert water from the Sacramento River during certain flow conditions, regulatory agencies must determine when, how, and under what circumstances those diversions may occur. Draft decisions and permit reviews have been part of the ongoing process of defining those operational rules. The timeline has stretched across many years. Planning efforts date back well over a decade, involving local agencies, water districts, counties, and state entities. Over time, the proposal evolved through engineering studies, environmental reviews, financing discussions, and legal proceedings. What was once largely conceptual has gradually moved toward implementation. Current project schedules anticipate construction beginning during 2026, with operations expected near the end of 2033 if development proceeds according to plan. That lengthy timeline reflects both the complexity and scale of the undertaking. Building a reservoir capable of storing 1.5 million acre-feet of water is not a simple excavation project. It requires coordinated engineering, extensive earth moving, dam construction, pumping infrastructure, environmental compliance, transportation modifications, and integration with existing water systems. Each component involves its own technical requirements and regulatory approvals. The funding announcement therefore represents more than a budgetary decision. It signals continued momentum behind one of California's largest water infrastructure projects in decades. The state's leadership has repeatedly emphasized that future water planning must account for increasing variability in precipitation patterns. Water managers are attempting to prepare for a future in which storms may become more intense, droughts more prolonged, and historical assumptions about water availability less reliable. Additional storage capacity is viewed as one tool for navigating those uncertainties. The numbers associated with California's water challenges illustrate the scale of the issue. State projections indicate that hotter and drier conditions could reduce portions of California's water supply in coming decades. At the same time, existing systems must continue serving millions of residents, major agricultural regions, industrial users, and environmental needs. Water infrastructure built for 20th century conditions increasingly faces 21st century pressures. That reality helps explain why storage projects continue to attract attention despite lengthy development timelines and significant costs. Water infrastructure is often measured not in years, but in generations. Reservoirs, aqueducts, pumping stations, and delivery networks are typically expected to function for decades after completion. Decisions made today can shape water availability far into the future. Supporters of expanded storage frequently point to the importance of preparing before shortages occur rather than reacting afterward. California's experience with repeated droughts has reinforced the importance of maintaining reserves capable of carrying communities through difficult periods. At the same time, increasingly intense winter storms have highlighted opportunities to capture water that previously moved through the system too quickly to store effectively. The Sites Reservoir proposal was developed around that central idea. Capture more water when nature provides it, and preserve that resource for periods when nature does not. Its location away from a major river channel distinguishes it from many older reservoir projects. Because it is designed as an off-stream facility, water is stored in a separate basin rather than behind a dam directly blocking a major river. Project proponents have argued that this design offers operational advantages while avoiding some issues associated with traditional river damming approaches. The reservoir's connection to existing water infrastructure also enhances its strategic importance. Stored water could interact with larger state and federal water systems, creating opportunities for coordinated management across regions. Integration with broader networks increases flexibility during both wet and dry periods. Recreation forms another component of the long-term vision. Project documents indicate the completed reservoir could attract approximately 187,000 visitors annually. Recreational opportunities associated with large reservoirs often include boating, fishing, wildlife viewing, and outdoor activities that contribute to local economies. Yet even with growing momentum, the project has not crossed every finish line. Additional requirements remain, before all funding can be finalized and construction activities fully proceed. Financing arrangements, permits, environmental compliance obligations, and other statutory requirements continue to be part of the process. That reality underscores an important point often overlooked in discussions about major infrastructure projects. Announcing funding does not instantly create a completed reservoir. Large-scale public works move through successive stages of planning, approval, financing, construction, testing, and operation. Each phase carries its own milestones. Nevertheless, the nearly $269 million funding increase announced in June of 2026 represents one of the clearest indicators yet that California intends to move forward aggressively with Sites Reservoir. For a state where water remains among the most strategically important resources, the project embodies a broader effort to adapt infrastructure to changing conditions. Rather than relying exclusively on historical systems, California is pursuing additional storage capacity intended to capture the benefits of wet years and reduce the hardships of dry ones. The significance of that approach extends far beyond a single reservoir. It reflects an evolving philosophy of water management in which resilience, flexibility, and storage capacity play increasingly central roles. As climate variability places greater pressure on existing systems, infrastructure capable of preserving water during times of abundance may become as valuable as infrastructure that delivers it. The announcement of nearly $269 million in new funding therefore stands as more than a financial headline. It marks another major step in a decades-long effort to reshape how California stores water, manages extremes, and prepares for an uncertain future. Whether viewed through the lens of drought preparedness, flood management, agricultural reliability, environmental stewardship, or urban water security, the Sites Reservoir Project has become one of the defining water infrastructure initiatives of the modern era in California. With construction efforts advancing and public investment continuing to grow, the reservoir is steadily moving from blueprint to reality. The outcome will help determine how one of the world's largest economies confronts one of its oldest challenges, ensuring that enough water is available not only when it is plentiful, but also when it is needed most. The importance of additional storage becomes even more apparent when examining the geography of California itself. Water supplies and water demand rarely exist in the same locations. Much of the state's precipitation falls in the northern regions and mountainous areas, while some of the largest population centers and agricultural districts are located hundreds of miles and hundreds of kilometers away. This geographic imbalance has shaped California's water policies for more than a century. Massive infrastructure systems were built to move water across valleys, mountain ranges, and urban corridors. Reservoirs became critical components of that network because they allowed water captured during wet periods to be saved and distributed later when demand increased. Sites Reservoir is being developed within that larger framework. Rather than replacing existing facilities, it is intended to complement them. The reservoir would function as another storage asset connected to a statewide system that already includes dams, canals, pumping stations, aqueducts, and groundwater recharge programs. One reason state officials continue to emphasize storage expansion is the changing nature of precipitation itself. Historically, California relied heavily on mountain snowpack as a natural reservoir. Snow accumulated during winter months and gradually melted over time, providing a relatively predictable release of water throughout spring and summer. Recent decades have demonstrated that this pattern cannot always be taken for granted. Warmer temperatures can cause a greater percentage of winter precipitation to fall as rain instead of snow. Rain enters river systems much more quickly than snowmelt. Without sufficient storage infrastructure, large volumes of water can pass through watersheds before they can be captured and preserved for future use. This challenge became particularly visible during several recent wet years when powerful atmospheric river storms delivered extraordinary amounts of precipitation across California. Reservoirs filled rapidly, rivers surged, and flood control releases became necessary in many locations. At the same time, water managers recognized that future droughts remained inevitable. That contrast illustrates a defining feature of California's water reality. A state can experience flooding during one season and severe water shortages during another. The issue is not always the total amount of precipitation received over time. Often, the issue involves timing. Water arriving too quickly creates one set of challenges. Water failing to arrive later creates another. The Sites Reservoir Project is designed around the concept of timing. By capturing portions of high river flows during wetter periods, managers hope to increase the amount of water available when conditions inevitably become drier. The economic implications are also substantial. California's agricultural industry depends on reliable water access for crops grown across millions of acres and millions of hectares of farmland. Production schedules, crop investments, labor planning, and long-term land management decisions are all influenced by water availability. Greater storage capacity can help reduce uncertainty by providing additional supplies during dry years. Urban regions face similar concerns. Population growth, economic development, and infrastructure planning all require dependable water resources. Cities must prepare not only for current needs, but also for future demand. Additional storage can provide operational flexibility during periods when traditional supplies are constrained. The reservoir's development also reflects a broader national trend toward modernization of water infrastructure. Many of the largest dams, reservoirs, and conveyance systems in the United States were built during the 20th century. While those facilities remain essential, changing environmental conditions are encouraging states to invest in new projects capable of addressing contemporary challenges. California's approach increasingly involves a combination of strategies rather than reliance on any single solution. Conservation programs encourage more efficient water use. Groundwater recharge projects seek to replenish underground aquifers. Water recycling initiatives expand the use of treated supplies. Desalination projects have been explored in some regions. Additional storage represents another piece of that larger puzzle.